Thanks for staying with us. Grief, they say, is a natural response to loss. It's the emotional suffering you feel when something or someone you love is taken away. Join us to discuss the types, symptoms, and how to cope with grief is a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner and a grief coach, Udak Ukpong. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Good to
Thank
have.
you.
And I
Thank
think
you.
today is the perfect day for you to be here
Yes,
because
yes.
we just spoke about a family that lost a young girl who was a copper. And not just that she passed, she was dismembered. And that's the horrible way for anybody to die. And of course, we know the family is grieving. And aside that, there are also many people who are grieving for different things. Many people don't see grief as an item of conversation. It's just something, it's a feeling. Could you help us define grief and see how can we really see this as something worth studying about?
So thank you very much for having me on here, and my heart goes out to the family that suffered the loss of the young girl. So grief is one of the things I always say is grief is universal. Grief has no color, it has no race, it has no sex, and it has no location. Grief can happen to anybody, anywhere. And then when you talk about loss is not just a loss of a person. Loss of a career, loss of a dream is also grief. But the way that you respond to it is what really determines how you pull out of it. So a lot of people lose stuff and don't even know that they are grieving. I have a friend who was speaking to me the other day on how she started a life in an acting career, but she gave it up to get married and have kids. And she's like, oh, and unfortunately, the marriage didn't really go well.
Oh, no.
And then she's like, you know, if I had known, probably I would have just gone on with my acting career. And now she's trying to get back into acting. And it's like, that's a loss. That's the loss of a life, a dream that she had. That's grief. And it's the same way that the body will respond to the loss of a person.
Right.
But people don't place value on losses. Is we hear it's been 2 years, get over it. You hear,
Yes.
it's been 6 months, get over it. But one of the things that brings me back home is to educate people about grief. There's a phrase called grief illiteracy. But no one knows that up until you know about grief, you can know how illiterate you are about grief. And there's what I always say is called positive toxicity. Oh, you'll be fine, it's okay. There's sometimes you should just keep quiet and listen. You know, listen to what that person has to say. Sometimes just being quiet is a support you can show to someone that is experiencing loss. No matter how long it is. They usually say, time heals all wounds. But do you know what I say? Not all wounds are healed by time. And
Okay, so I have a friend who lost her dad on the 31st of last year. And, you know, they were the closest. I think ours will be worse than mine because they were the closest. Every time she's with me, she's calling daddy's sorting out her business. And he's always helped with her business. And so I saw her just this week on Monday. She's not in a good place. As you mentioned, I sat listening to her. It was tough for me, you know, because I had lost my dad and I had such a relationship. But I just knew she needed to excel. So I sat and listened to her. But I left her knowing she's not going to be any better than what I just sat there. And so I just gave her a few assignments. I said, okay, can you sort out his books, sort out his room? She was shocked. Said nobody had said that. I said, one of the things that will help is to find something he would have needed to do. So start doing them, like his books, his documents, his room. Can you wash his clothes, clean that place up, you know? And she was like, oh, I'll do that this weekend. But that's all. I know I did not help anything.
But the little that you did has made a difference. Because at the time, that initial time of losing someone, so there's a science to grief. So there's a way that your body responds to grief. It's the physiology of grief. So there's what we call the emotional processing center of the brain. That's the amygdala. And the same way that your body responds to responds to an action or responds to stress is the same way your body will respond to loss. What happens to the emotional processing center of the brain when you lose someone? It becomes very hyperactive. That intense pain, the intense sadness, it comes from the hyperactivity of the emotional processing center of the brain. So in times like that, there's going to be that intense. So it's not abnormal to feel that intense sadness or that intense emotional, pain of loss. So in times like that, like what you did, told her, hey, sort out these things. Those are things that can help you cope through loss. Sometimes you want to, I have a couple of grief journals that I have created where you can just journal, write down your thoughts. If it's, to create a memoir, like create a book of, what the person liked. And I don't know if the person has been buried, but there's a time to put stuff together. How would this person would have wanted to be buried?
Yeah.
So when you do something like that, it shows that, you're actually able to, you're letting go of that, emotions by, putting it down.
Yeah. Okay. So what are your thoughts about maybe cutting off or, giving a bit of distance from people that are forcing you to heal quicker than you're ready for? Like, for example, I have a friend that went through terrible marriage, domestic violence, and, divorce. And she had this older friend that was so supportive and there for her. In fact, she was even the one that came to take her from the house. But she, because I noticed that most times you call her, sometimes she won't pick up her phones for days. And then I didn't understand it till, I got to know her better. And then I'll send a message and be ready for her. And she said that lady was always telling her, oh, get over this thing now. Time has gone. Get over it. And she had to cut, that she misses that friendship, but she needed to cut that lady off for her own mental health. Yes.
And I mentioned something about positive toxicity.
Yes.
People don't know that toxicity can be positive. Get over it. It's been over. It's been 6 months. It's been 1 year. That is positive toxicity. And it's okay to stay away from positive toxicity. And I don't blame the individuals because they are illiterate about loss. So they think that those platitudes like, oh, you'll be fine, at least you're out of the marriage, so you're going to be fine. But they don't know that that's not what that person needs emotionally. So even though I am a widow of 7 years, my husband passed away about 7 years ago. And I had a friend who recently told me why, when I started doing this, and, I changed my profile, I had widow. She's like, why do you have yourself as a widow? So I said to her, is there a word that defines a woman that her husband passed away in the dictionary? If you know what that word is, please let me know. Because really, the only way to define someone whose husband has passed away is a widow. And I've also worked with a client who also experienced something similar to what you're saying. And what I always advise is that your mental sanity is very important. If you feel that people around you don't understand what you're going through, it's okay to pull back and heal. And it's okay to heal alone. Healing alone is normal.
That's what you need. I was going to say, especially when you brought up positive toxicity, I find that I'm becoming more hesitant on how to provide empathy or solace or whatever to people who are grieving, because I get to read constantly of people saying, this is what she said to me. So you have the best of intentions. You just really want the person to do better. And you use the words that you know, and somehow you read about the same words that you've always used, and they say that it is not really from the heart, or it's putting the person under pressure. And so there's the pressure of how do we really provide some support to a friend or family member that's grieving.
So one of the things that I always say is show compassion. And when we say show compassion, sometimes it's okay to educate yourself about what that person is passing through so you know how to help. Because you really can help what you don't know about. Because you haven't experienced it. You don't know that pain that person is going through. So what you think is okay to say and what you think is okay to do might not be ideal, because really, people say, I understand how you feel. No, you don't. So times like that, whatever it is that person is going through, as a friend, the least you can do is educate yourself about it so you know how to help. You know how to, something as simple as if this person had kids, hey, can I pick up the kids from school for you today?
Okay. Let me go on a very short break. When I come back, we'll continue this conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back.